My name is Margaret Burchett. I'm 31 years old, and 6 months ago, I thought I had everything a woman could want: a stable job, a loving husband, a close-knit family, and a little home that always smelled like coffee and fresh laundry. I didn't know that beneath that quiet, ordinary life, everything was already cracking. Daniel and I met in college. He wasn't the kind of man who demanded attention. He earned it effortlessly. He was witty without trying, dependable without being dull, the kind of man everyone trusted. When he smiled, people listened. When he laughed, I felt lucky just to be the reason why. We got married a few years after graduation, a small ceremony, nothing extravagant, but filled with love. I remember standing under that old oak tree wind, catching my veil, thinking, this is it. I've found my home. For years, life flowed like a calm river. He worked in marketing. I worked as a graphic designer. Our days were predictable: coffee together in the morning, quiet dinners at night, movie marathons on weekends. It wasn't thrilling, but it was ours. I thought contentment was enough. And then came Fiona, my younger sister. She was the sunshine in every room, the kind of woman people notice even when she's not trying to be noticed. Growing up, she was always behind me, borrowing my clothes, my makeup, my advice. As adults, she became a wedding planner, fitting since she thrived on happiness and applause. She even helped plan my wedding to Daniel. I remember her crying when I said I do. I thought those tears meant love. I didn't know they hid something else. For the longest time, we three, Daniel, Fiona, and I, were inseparable. Family dinners, birthdays, weekend, get-togethers. Fiona would tease Daniel about his terrible dancing, and he'd roll his eyes, pretending to be annoyed. I used to laugh along. Back then, I thought it was all harmless fun. But then something changed. Subtle at first, like a faint chill creeping through a closed window. Daniel started working later than usual. Deadlines, he'd say, kissing my forehead before grabbing his laptop. At first, I didn't think much of it. We were both busy adults. But then he started being protective, no possessive of his phone. He kept it face down, always within reach, even took it into the bathroom. One night I joked, "What are you texting state secrets now?" He smiled that same charming smile and said, "Just keeping it safe. Don't want it scratched." I laughed, but something inside me tightened. He began caring more about his appearance, too, buying cologne he'd never worn before, changing his hairstyle, even jogging before work. Daniel hated jogging. I asked him what brought on the sudden health kick. He said, "I want to feel better about myself." That answer didn't sit right. I started noticing little things. His eyes always somewhere else, his laughter forced when I spoke. But when I told Fiona I thought Daniel was distant, she laughed it off. "Oh, Nat," she said, twirling her hair like she always did when trying to look sincere. "Every couple hits a plateau. Don't overthink it. You've been together for years. He loves you." Her voice was comforting, her words smooth, too smooth. She had always been the fixer in our family, the peacemaker. So when she told me not to worry, I believed her. Because she was my sister. Because Daniel was my husband. Because it was easier to trust than to confront the storm I didn't want to see. But something inside me was shifting, a quiet voice whispering, "Something's wrong, Margaret." Still, I silenced it. I told myself I was just tired, paranoid. I didn't want to be that wife, the insecure one who imagines monsters in every shadow. Until one evening. Daniel and I were sitting on the couch, a movie playing in the background. He had his phone in his hand, screen glowing against his face. He was smiling, not just a grin, but that soft, intimate kind of smile, the kind that used to be mine. "What's so funny?" I asked lightly, trying to sound playful. He quickly locked the screen and set the phone face down. "Oh, nothing," he said too quickly. "Just some dumb work thing." I nodded, but I could feel my heartbeat echoing in my ears. He didn't look at me again for the rest of the night. That smile haunted me. I replayed it in my head over and over again, that secret, tender look he hadn't given me in months. I told myself maybe I was imagining things, but deep down I knew. I just didn't know what I knew yet. The next few days he was colder, not in an obvious way, just elsewhere. Conversations ended faster. Kisses felt routine. Even when he said "I love you," the words felt mechanical. I started sleeping later, sitting alone in the dim light of our living room pretending to read. But really I was studying him, how he moved, how he avoided my eyes when I asked simple questions like, "How was your day?" One night I reached for his phone while he was in the shower. My fingers hovered over the screen, my breath shallow. But I couldn't do it. I told myself that if I had to go through his phone to feel secure, then maybe I was the problem. I put it back down, ashamed. A few days later, I tried to talk to Fiona again. I don't know, Fee, I said, stirring my coffee. He's different lately. Distant. Maybe I'm crazy. Fiona reached across the table, touching my hand. Her nails were perfectly manicured, painted a soft blush pink. You're not crazy, she said with a warm smile. You're just overthinking. Daniel's loyal Nat. You got lucky with that one. Her touch lingered just a second too long, and for the first time it didn't feel comforting. It felt rehearsed. That night, I stood at the sink, washing dishes, and a strange calm came over me. The kind that comes right before something breaks. I could feel the truth circling me like a predator. My reflection in the kitchen window looked like a stranger's hollow-eyed, tight-lipped, standing in a home that suddenly didn't feel safe. I told myself I'd stop doubting him. I'd stop doubting them. I'd be a better wife, more understanding, less suspicious. But as I turned off the faucet and walked toward the living room, I saw Daniel sitting on the couch again. The TV was on mute. His phone glowed in his hand, that same soft smile spreading across his face. He didn't hear me walk in. He didn't see me watching. And that's when I knew my marriage wasn't crumbling. It had already crumbled. I just hadn't noticed the dust around me. I didn't confront him that night. I went to bed staring at the ceiling, every nerve in my body alive with quiet dread. Because the truth doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. And that whisper had finally found me. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smile again, the one he gave to his phone, not to me. By morning, my pillow was damp with sweat, and my chest felt heavy as if my own heartbeat was trying to warn me of something I was still refusing to see. For the next few days, I went on autopilot. Work, laundry, dinner, smile, pretend. It was easier that way, but something inside me had shifted like a wire had snapped quietly inside my chest. I started watching Daniel without meaning to. Every word, every glance, every pause between his sentences. I noticed that he was checking his phone more often than before, and when I walked into the room, his thumb would always hover just long enough before locking the screen. One night, while we were eating dinner, his phone buzzed against the table. The name on the screen flashed just a first name, F. He quickly flipped it over before I could say anything. I asked, "Who's that?" He smiled easily, too easily. "Work. Fiona's just asking about Mom's birthday dinner." My fork froze midair. Fiona. Of course. Why wouldn't she be texting him? They were family. It was harmless. Except that same moment I noticed the faint flush that crept up his neck, the kind he got when he was nervous. That night, after he went to bed, I sat in the living room staring at his phone on the counter. The blue glow from the aquarium light flickered across the glass surface like ripples of temptation. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, I remembered something, a tiny, forgotten detail from years ago. When Daniel bought his new iPhone, we had linked our Apple IDs to share apps and playlists. It had seemed convenient at the time, an act of trust. My hands trembled as I picked up my phone. I didn't breathe as I opened settings, relinked his account, and waited. The spinning icon on the screen might as well have been my heart. And then the messages started loading. At first, it looked ordinary. Family texts, dinner plans, random memes. I almost laughed. Maybe I was paranoid. But then further down the thread, something changed. The messages between him and Fiona were longer, softer, filled with jokes that only two people could understand. Fiona. You always make me laugh. Don't tell Nat I said that. Daniel. Your secret's safe with me. My blood went cold. I scrolled faster, my fingers trembling. Fiona, you still have that sweater I stole, Daniel. Yeah, but it looks better on you. There was a photo. Fiona in his dark gray sweater, the one he wore every Sunday morning while making pancakes. She was smiling at the camera hair, messy eyes, soft. The caption, "Hope you don't mind, stole this from you again." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. My heart was hammering so loud that I thought he'd wake up in the other room. It wasn't explicit, not yet. But it didn't have to be. That photo said everything. I sat there in the dim light, scrolling, reading, sinking deeper into a world I didn't know existed. A world where my husband and my sister shared things I was never meant to see. I should have screamed, should have stormed into our bedroom and thrown the phone in his face, but instead I just sat there frozen. Because deep down I knew this wasn't just one mistake. This was years of lies dressed up as love. When I could finally move, I opened WhatsApp, another app he used often. And that's when everything unraveled. The chat with Fiona wasn't hidden, just renamed. Fiona W. How careless. I clicked it open and my stomach twisted. These weren't friendly messages, they were intimate. Daniel. Can't stop thinking about last night. Fiona. Me neither. I still smell like your cologne. Daniel. Don't say that, I'll lose my mind. Every line cut through me like glass. I kept scrolling hotels, dinners, excuses. Messages about how to keep things quiet. About me. Fiona. She's so trusting. I almost feel bad. Daniel, don't. She'll never find out. I wanted to throw the phone, to break something, to scream until the neighbors called the police, but I didn't. I took screenshots. Every message, every photo, every timestamp. Proof. Because if they could play a game, so could I. Over the next few days, I became an actress. I smiled at breakfast, asked about his work, even kissed him goodbye. I went to lunch with Fiona and listened as she told me about her upcoming wedding to Alex, the man she loved more than anything. She showed me pictures of her wedding dress, her eyes sparkling. I smiled back, nodding like a proud sister while my hands clenched beneath the table. When Daniel got home that night, he kissed me on the cheek. You okay? He asked. You seem distracted. I looked at him and almost laughed. Just tired, I said. You know how it is. He smiled, relieved. You work too hard, Nat. I wanted to ask if lying was part of his job description. Days passed like that quiet, suffocating days, where every word felt fake, every breath rehearsed. But I kept my mask on. I had to. One evening, while Daniel was in the shower, I synced his calendar to mine just to see. And there it was. The pattern. Every client meeting, every gym session, every late-night project. They lined up perfectly with Fiona's event consultations and vendor calls. Same hours, same locations. I scrolled to the upcoming week. Thursday client dinner, 6:30 p.m. Fiona's schedule venue check, 6:30 p.m. I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound that echoed in the empty kitchen. When he came out of the shower towel around his neck, he looked at me curiously. What's funny? Nothing, I said softly. Just thought of something stupid. He smiled, oblivious. You and your weird sense of humor. He leaned down to kiss me. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't close my eyes. That night as he slept, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling. I could hear the faint sound of his breathing, steady, peaceful. And I wondered, how could someone sleep so soundly after destroying everything sacred? The next morning, I looked at him differently, not as my husband, but as a stranger wearing the face of the man I once loved. And Fiona, she wasn't my sister anymore. She was something else entirely. I didn't confront them, not yet, because now I knew truth was a weapon, and I was done being the one bleeding from it. The morning light had that kind of brightness that hurts your eyes. Too clean, too innocent for the things people do beneath it. I remember sitting at the kitchen table watching Daniel butter his toast like nothing had changed, like the world hadn't shifted beneath us. He asked, "You're quiet this morning." I smiled, just thinking about Fiona's charity run this weekend. His hand froze for half a second, just a flicker, then he nodded. Yeah, she's been planning that thing for months. It was subtle, so subtle I might have missed it before, but I saw it. That tiny flicker of warmth in his eyes, the kind that wasn't for me. The charity event was one of Fiona's proudest projects. A fundraiser for the Children's Hospital, a perfect blend of doing good and getting attention. She had the sponsors, the photographers, the press. Fiona always knew how to make goodness look glamorous. Daniel, of course, volunteered to help. He wasn't the volunteering type. He hated crowds, hated running, but suddenly he was excited about it. It'll be fun, he said. Something we can do together. Together. The word tasted wrong in my mouth. The day of the event, the town square was alive, sunlight flashing off balloons, kids with painted faces running around tables covered in water bottles and fruit cups. Everyone wore t-shirts with the hospital's logo. Fiona stood at the front of the crowd, clipboard in hand, ponytail bouncing that wide, effortless smile plastered across her face. She looked radiant. She always did when people were watching. Daniel stood beside her wearing his race bib, joking with volunteers helping adjust banners. Their laughter blended too easily. His hand brushed her elbow as they leaned over the same clipboard. No one else noticed, but I did. Every tiny touch was a scream to me. I stayed behind the sign-up tent, pretending to fix the stack of flyers. My hands were trembling, not from jealousy, but from disgust, the kind that made your stomach turn cold. Before the run started, I checked my phone. It had become a habit, a ritual. I opened their WhatsApp chat, my thumb hovering over the newest messages. Daniel, can't wait to see you today. Fiona. You'll love the view at the water station. I'll be there. They were texting while standing in the same field. I looked up from my screen just in time to see them stretching together near the starting line. Daniel made some joke. Fiona laughed and pushed his arm playfully, her eyes sparkling. My husband, my sister, right there in public. People clapped as the countdown began. I clapped too, because what else could I do? My palms stung from how hard I hit them together. When the horn blew, Daniel and Fiona took off side by side, running in perfect sync. I followed them with my eyes until they disappeared around the bend of the trail. I stayed behind handing out water bottles, smiling for photos, pretending everything was fine. Pretending was the only thing I was good at by then. Half an hour later, when runners started returning, Fiona came up first, flushed, sweaty, glowing. Daniel came a few seconds after her, laughing, teasing her about how she cheated by cutting corners. They stood there together, grinning like teenagers. I wanted to throw the entire water cooler at them. After the race, there was a small closing ceremony. Fiona climbed onto the stage, her voice steady and bright. This event wouldn't have been possible without my amazing family, she said, scanning the crowd. Her eyes found Daniel's, and the people who supported me every step of the way. Daniel smiled back, proud and unashamed. My stomach clenched so hard I thought I might be sick. She called my name too, of course, and my sister Margaret, my best friend, and my rock. I forced myself to step forward, waving as the crowd cheered. Fiona threw her arm around me for the photo. Her skin was warm, her perfume sweet, the same scent I once helped her choose for her birthday. For a second, the flash went off, freezing us in a frame, two smiling sisters perfect on the outside, rotten underneath. Later, as the crowd began to thin out, I stood alone behind the stage, scrolling through their latest messages. Fiona, you did amazing today. So proud of you. Daniel, not as proud as I am of you, Fiona. Stop, people will see. Daniel, let them. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. A volunteer approached me with a smile. You okay? You look pale. I forced a laugh. Just dehydrated. That night when I got home, I replayed everything in my mind, their touches, their laughter, her speech. The mask was perfect, too perfect. But something inside me had hardened. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. It was strategy. If they wanted to act, I'd give them a stage. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in front of my laptop scrolling through photos I'd taken at the event. Fiona handing Daniel a medal. Daniel adjusting her ponytail. 1,000 tiny betrayals hiding behind smiles. My reflection in the screen looked calm, eerily calm. I clicked on the folder I'd created days ago. Truth. I added the screenshots, the messages, the photos, the proof. Then I whispered to myself, she loves perfect weddings, doesn't she? Let's make her next one unforgettable. The next morning, Fiona called, her voice cheerful. Nat, I have the best news. Will you be my maid of honor? I stared at the phone for a long second before answering. Of course, I said softly. Anything for you. She squealed with joy, completely unaware of what I was planning. As she kept talking, her words blurred into static in my ears. My gaze drifted to Daniel, who was sitting on the couch, smiling faintly at the sound of her voice. In that moment, something in me broke completely. But it wasn't sadness this time. It was resolve. Because Fiona's wedding wasn't just going to be her happiest day. It was going to be her reckoning. The morning of Fiona's wedding was quiet, unnervingly so. The kind of silence that feels staged, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for the first line of a performance. I woke up before dawn, even though I hadn't really slept. My eyes were swollen from exhaustion, but my hands were steady. I'd spent weeks preparing for this day, rehearsing every word, every movement. The house was already buzzing by the time I arrived at the bridal suite. Fiona stood in front of a mirror, surrounded by laughter, champagne flutes, and bridesmaids adjusting their hair. She looked breathtaking, radiant, in her lace gown curls, pinned perfectly, that familiar sparkle in her eyes. To anyone else, she was the image of happiness. Nat, she exclaimed when she saw me. You're here. She threw her arms around me, squeezing tight. Her perfume, that same soft floral scent she always wore, filled my nose, making me want to recoil. You look beautiful, I said. My voice sounded calm, practiced. She smiled, eyes glistening. You've always been my good luck charm. I couldn't imagine this day without you. There was a part of me that almost pitied her. Almost. As I helped fasten her veil, our reflections met in the mirror, Two sisters side by side, one glowing, one hollow. I studied her face carefully. How easy it must have been for her to play both roles, the doting sister and the secret lover. "You nervous?" I asked softly. She laughed. "No, just excited. I can't believe I get to marry the man of my dreams." For a split second, the words pierced me. The man of her dreams. My husband. My nightmare. I smiled, but it felt like barbed wire stretching across my lips. "You deserve everything, Fiona." She turned to look at me, touched. "You really think so?" "Yes," I said, "everything that's coming to you." She didn't hear the venom. Or maybe she did and thought it was love. The ceremony itself was picture-perfect sunlight and spilling through the trees. White petals scattered across the aisle, a string quartet playing something soft and sentimental. The kind of wedding Fiona would have built for her clients, flawless, romantic, cruelly beautiful. Alex, her fiancé, stood waiting at the altar, eyes bright with the naive devotion of a man who didn't yet know he was being made a fool. I watched him and felt a strange mix of sorrow and rage. He didn't deserve this. None of us did. Then Fiona appeared, walking down the aisle, every step slow and graceful. The crowd sighed in admiration. Daniel, standing just behind the groomsmen, watched her too. His expression wasn't brotherly. It was longing, quiet, hungry, unmistakable. And for the first time in months, I felt calm, because I knew no matter how much they smiled, no matter how perfect the picture looked, the truth was sitting right there beneath the lace and flowers, waiting for me to reveal it. At the reception, the air buzzed with chatter and clinking glasses. Fairy lights draped across the garden, casting everything in a soft golden glow. Fiona floated from guest to guest, like a star, her laughter ringing like bells. Daniel followed her with his eyes every time she passed. When our mother stood to toast the couple, she said through tears, "I've never seen Fiona so happy. This is what true love looks like." I felt my stomach twist. I wanted to scream, "No, this is what betrayal looks like, dressed up in white." But not yet. I waited. I smiled. I played the role. Until finally the host announced, "And now a few words from our maid of honor, Fiona's sister Margaret." Applause rippled through the room. My legs moved on their own, carrying me to the microphone. The spotlight burned against my face, but I felt strangely steady, like I'd been preparing for this my whole life. Fiona's eyes sparkled with affection. Daniel looked proud, almost smug. Alex reached for Fiona's hand. I raised my glass. "Good evening, everyone." The crowd hushed. My voice came out smooth measured. Fiona and I grew up sharing everything: toys, secrets, dreams. And today she's sharing something else. Something that changed my life. A soft murmur ran through the guests. Fiona tilted her head, still smiling, though unease flickered across her eyes. "I've always admired how Fiona puts her whole heart into the people she loves," I continued. "She's brave like that. She doesn't hold back even when she knows she shouldn't." Daniel's smile faltered. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Over the past few months, I've learned that love can be complicated, that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. I opened the messages, my thumb trembling only slightly as I projected the screen onto the venue's display, the one meant for the wedding slideshow. Gasps filled the air. "Fiona, you'll always be my favorite. Daniel. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same place." The words glowed across the screen like fire. For a long second, there was only silence. Fiona's face drained of color. Daniel's chair screeched as he half stood. I turned toward them, my voice cutting through the murmurs. "These aren't work messages. These are from my husband, to my sister, the woman sitting beside her fiancé, pretending to be pure." Someone dropped their glass. It shattered on the floor. Alex looked between Fiona and me, confusion morphing into horror. "Fiona," he whispered, "please tell me this isn't real." Fiona opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Daniel tried to step forward. "Margaret, please." "Don't," I snapped, my voice echoing through the speakers. "You've said enough." Alex snatched my phone, scrolling through the screenshots, each one worse than the last photo's messages' timestamps. His breathing quickened, his face crumpled. Finally, he turned to Fiona, his voice breaking. "How long?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Alex, it was a mistake. It's over, I swear." He shook his head, stepping back. "You disgust me." He ripped off his boutonniere and walked out the crowd, parting like water around him. Fiona collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Daniel stood frozen pale and trembling. I took a slow sip of champagne and set the glass down. I guess this is what true love looks like after all. No one moved. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Then I turned heels clicking against the marble floor and walked straight out the door. Behind me, I could hear the chaos erupt: shouts, cries, phones buzzing, whispers spreading like wildfire. But I didn't look back, not once. Outside, the air was cool and sharp. The night sky stretched wide and dark, and for the first time in months, I really breathed. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like release. Because sometimes destruction isn't revenge. It's freedom. I didn't go home right away that night. I just drove aimlessly, windows down, letting the cold air slice through the static in my chest. My phone buzzed nonstop on the passenger seat, calls, texts, notifications lighting up like fireworks. I didn't check a single one. By the time I finally parked outside my house, it was almost midnight. The silence that greeted me when I stepped inside was the kind of silence that feels alive, waiting, watching. Daniel's shoes were still by the door. His jacket still hung neatly on the hook. It was strange standing there knowing those things belonged to a man who no longer existed to me. When I finally looked at my phone, I saw the first message from my cousin Jenna, who had stayed at the wedding after I left. Jenna, you should have seen it. Alex just walked out. Fiona's hysterical. Daniel tried to follow you, but Mom stopped him. Everyone knows now. I reread that message 3 times. Everyone knows. I didn't realize how heavy those words would feel. Not relief, not pride, just a quiet, empty ache. Then came a flood of others, relatives, old friends, co-workers. Some messages were full of sympathy. Others were thinly disguised curiosity. People loved a scandal, especially when it wasn't their own. At 2 a.m., Daniel came home. His face was pale eyes, red-rimmed. For once, he didn't look like the man who always had the right words. He looked small, defeated. He stood in the doorway, silent for a long time before finally saying, "I guess you're done with me now." I didn't move. Guess right. He ran a hand through his hair. "Nat, please. I know there's nothing I can say to fix this, but—" "You're right," I interrupted. "There's not." He opened his mouth again, but I handed him a folder before he could speak. Divorce papers. Already signed by me. I'd had them ready for weeks. He stared down at them, his jaw trembling. "You planned this." "I planned to survive you," I said. He signed without argument. Maybe guilt finally weighed more than pride. When he handed the papers back, I didn't look at him. "You can pack tonight," I said quietly. "I don't care where you go. Just don't be here when I wake up." For a moment, I thought he'd try to explain to make excuses, but he didn't. He just whispered, "I'm sorry," grabbed his coat and left. The sound of the door closing was the most beautiful noise I'd ever heard. By morning, my phone was still buzzing. Jenna called again. "You should know," she said breathlessly, "the video of your speech is online. Someone filmed the whole thing." I sat up. "What video?" "The part where you exposed them. People are talking about it. Like a lot." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I hadn't wanted this to become entertainment. But maybe some stories demanded to be told. By afternoon, everyone in our social circle had seen it. Friends, co-workers, even Daniel's boss. His company was small, the kind where gossip spread faster than newsletters. That evening, a mutual friend texted me. Clara, his CEO, called him in today. Told him he could resign or be fired. He's gone. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling nothing but a tired sort of justice. As for Fiona, her downfall came slower but crueler. Her wedding planning business had always thrived on image. "Trust, love, elegance," her tagline read. Within a week, her clients started canceling. Some demanded refunds. Others left scathing reviews. No one wanted to hire a woman who'd destroyed her sister's marriage. The irony was poetic. The woman who built her reputation on creating perfect love stories had written her own tragedy instead. Mom called me 2 days later. Her voice trembled with worry. "Margaret, please don't shut your sister out forever. She's made mistakes, but she's still family." "Family doesn't do what she did," I said. "She's broken," Mom pleaded. "She needs help." "Then let her fix herself," I replied, my voice firm. "I'm done patching up other people's messes." There was silence on the other end. Finally, she sighed. "You've changed." "Good," I said and hung up. Dad was quieter about the whole thing. When he finally called, his tone was low, steady. "I told Fiona she's not welcome in this house until she apologizes to you. Sincerely. Until then, she's on her own." It was the first time in years I felt like he truly saw me. In the weeks that followed, I watched their lives collapse piece by piece. Fiona moved out of town, rumors swirling like dust behind her. Daniel, jobless and humiliated, went to live with his parents. Every once in a while, I'd get a late-night text from an unknown number, just one word, "Please." I never replied. I thought revenge would feel triumphant, that I'd feel power or closure. But mostly I felt quiet, empty but clean, like standing in the wreckage of a storm and realizing you're still alive. One evening, a message from Alex appeared in my inbox. Alex, I don't know how to thank you for telling the truth. I wish it hadn't been that way, but I'm glad I found out before it was too late. Me, you didn't deserve any of it. Alex, neither did you. We didn't talk much after that. Just a few exchanges. Polite, careful. Two people orbiting the same pain from different angles. But his messages reminded me that there was still decency left somewhere in the world, that not everyone lied with a smile. It took a while to realize that the silence in my house wasn't loneliness anymore, it was peace. Some nights I still woke up reaching for the side of the bed that used to be his. But then I'd roll over and remind myself I didn't lose a husband. I lost a liar. The world had seen Fiona and Daniel for who they were. Their fall was public, messy, humiliating. But my recovery would be quiet, personal, real. Because while they were busy destroying themselves, I was busy rebuilding. And that's something they could never touch again. Time is strange after betrayal. It doesn't move in a straight line, it folds, ripples, doubles back on itself. Some days felt like I was standing in the ashes of my old life. Others like I'd finally learned how to breathe without choking on the past. 3 months after the wedding, I moved into a small apartment downtown. It wasn't fancy, but it had sunlight, real generous sunlight that poured through the windows every morning. The walls were bare at first, the silence heavy, but I liked it. It was mine. I spent the first few nights sleeping on the couch surrounded by half-open boxes. I donated nearly everything that reminded me of Daniel, our furniture, our wedding china, even the framed photos from our honeymoon. Starting over wasn't about replacing things. It was about reclaiming space. The first morning there, I brewed coffee in a chipped mug and stood by the window watching the city wake up. No wedding rings, no lies, just me. And the quiet hum of life outside that didn't care about my scars. At work, I threw myself into projects. My boss noticed. "You've been a spurchit lately," she said one day. "You ever think about leading the new design campaign?" I smiled. "Yeah, I think I'm ready." It wasn't just about work. It was about proving to myself that I hadn't been destroyed, that I could still build something beautiful, not for Daniel, not for appearances, but for me. As for Fiona, she disappeared from our town completely. The last I heard, she was working as a receptionist at some small office in another state. Her once bustling Instagram page was gone, her company website deleted. It was as if she'd erased herself. Mom still tried to bring her up sometimes. "You'll regret cutting her off, Margaret," she'd say. "She's still your sister." Maybe I'd reply, "But sisters don't burn each other alive and then ask to be hugged after." Dad stayed silent on the matter. The last thing he'd said about Fiona was that he didn't recognize her anymore. I didn't either. Daniel tried reaching out once, a long email filled with all the things I used to wish he'd say I was wrong. "I don't know why I did it. You didn't deserve it." I deleted it without reading past the first line. There's no apology that can rebuild a home that's already ash. One unexpected thing did happen, though. Alex Fiona's ex-fiancé reached out again. It started simple. A message about work, then another about how surreal everything still felt. We met for coffee a few weeks later. I almost didn't go. I told myself it was a bad idea, two broken people clinging to the wreckage of the same disaster. But when I saw him sitting there, eyes tired but kind, something in me softened. "Hey," he said, smiling faintly. "You look okay." "Working on it," I said. We sat for hours talking about everything except Fiona and Daniel. About our jobs, childhood memories, favorite movies. For the first time in what felt like forever, I laughed genuinely. Laughed the kind that shakes something loose inside you. That meeting turned into a few more. Then dinners, walks, late-night calls. There was no rush, no pretense, no need to pretend we were healed. We just were. One evening, we went for a picnic at a park I used to visit with Daniel. I'd avoided that place since everything happened. But with Alex there, it felt different, lighter, almost new. We sat on a blanket under a tree, the sun slipping behind the skyline. He handed me a sandwich and said, "You ever think about how strange it is, how people like us end up in the same storm?" I smiled. Maybe the storm's not the point. Maybe it's what you do after it passes. He nodded. Then I'm glad we survived it. For the first time, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Fiona, not even at Daniel. Their betrayal had hurt me, yes, but it had also stripped away every illusion I'd ever had about love, family, and loyalty. What remained was something raw and honest. Peace. Therapy helped too. My therapist, an older woman with silver hair and kind eyes, told me something that stuck. "Healing isn't about forgetting," she said. "It's about remembering without bleeding." Some days I still wake up and feel that old ache, but it no longer owns me. I've learned to let it pass, like rain tapping against the window, temporary, gentle, survivable. I started writing again, little pieces of memory letters I'd never send. I even began journaling the story of what happened, not to relive it, but to understand it, to make it mine. Because that's what healing is, reclaiming the narrative. It's been nearly a year now. The divorce is finalized. Fiona's gone. Daniel's name hasn't crossed my lips in months. And me, I'm still here, stronger, softer, still learning how to live without flinching. Sometimes when I walk past a jewelry store, I see engagement rings glittering under the glass and think of the one I used to wear. I don't feel bitterness anymore, just distance. That chapter belongs to someone else now. Last weekend, Alex and I took a drive to the coast. We didn't talk much, just let the wind and ocean fill the silence. At one point, he reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. It wasn't love yet. Maybe it will be someday. Maybe not. But it was trust. And after everything, that felt even rarer. If you'd told me a year ago that I'd lose my husband, my sister, and the life I thought I wanted, and somehow come out calmer, freer, I'd have laughed. But here I am. Sometimes destruction isn't the end of the story. It's the clearing where the real one begins. My name is Margaret Burchett. I'm 31 years old. And for the first time in my life, I'm not waiting for someone else to choose me. I've already chosen myself.